Much has been said about knife defense, but I've rarely, if ever, heard such a down-to-earth, pragmatic approach to it. This is a video on Jessie Enkamp's channel. I'm not going to show you much of it. In fact, this is going to be mostly a recommendation for you to go and watch that if you haven't already. A lot of people have. It got 1.5 million views after only 2 weeks, which is well-deserved. So clearly, the video doesn't need a shout-out from me. It's not going to make much of a difference, but I liked it so much that I wanted to show you and tell you a little bit about it and make you go watch it. I mean, I can't make you watch it. I can't take my dagger and force you to watch it. If I could, I would. Anyway, so the guest here, as you can see, is Paulo Rubio, whose name you may have heard. Well-known instructor with a ton of experience. And what he says here is refreshingly realistic, down-to-earth, no-nonsense.
It's a probability judgment based on the information that you can gather in a split second.
That's a fantastic way to put it.
Should you expect to get cut?
I hear this all the time, right?
Yeah. Realistically, is there a very high chance of suffering a blade injury in a knife fight? Yes. Should you do absolutely everything possible to avoid that? Also yes. It sounds like you have to win the fight at all costs, and being stabbed or slashed is just a cost. But it's more like you have to avoid getting stabbed or slashed at all costs.
I think that's a defeatist mentality, right? And if we
Yeah, I rambled a lot and he put it much more succinctly.
The reason people say you will get cut or expect to get cut is that they don't want you to be shocked by it, and that the philosophy is to continue fighting. Yeah.
I feel like that happens naturally. Well, I mean, it depends, because different people gravitate either toward fight or flight, or freeze, really. Some people just freeze up and can't do anything, even when they're being threatened severely. But if you are able to fight at all, especially when your life is threatened and the adrenaline is pumping, it's more likely that you might not even notice. So many people have reported that. They've survived an encounter, been injured, and they didn't realize until after, including being shot. You know, they didn't realize that they were shot or stabbed or slashed or whatever until they saw the bleeding. So obviously it's important to emphasize just how extremely dangerous it is to absolutely discourage reckless behavior. But at the same time, there is a certain irony in telling people that the thing that you absolutely need to avoid is going to happen no matter what.
These are called pre-attack indicators.
That segment right there is gold. I'm not even going to play it. I'm just going to tell you to go watch it if you haven't already. By the way, the reason why I emphasize so much to watch that, listen to that guy, is because what I'm doing here is just nerding out for the fun of it. You know, your entertainment and also my own fun, because this is the kind of stuff that I like, I'm enthusiastic about. I find it fascinating to think about all these things and consider how does the brain work in these situations, and the body too, and what are the body mechanics of, you know, responding to certain threats, and how do the techniques work. And I may tell you about some experiences from my own martial arts practice, mainly from the time before I was turned into a wreck by all the chronic injuries and lack of self-discipline, let's face it. But if you're seriously interested in learning this as a practical skill, you need to listen to the competent instructors with a lot of experience who are also in fighting shape. He really nails exactly how this works. One of the main points here is that you can't actually see it coming. You can anticipate it, but you can't see it as it's happening because it's too fast. Unless you're a little speedster, it's not really happening. You have to predict what's about to happen. That, by the way, applies to martial arts in general. Well then, that's ironic, getting an emergency alert on my phone while making a video about knife defense. But that one's a test, so we're good.
How much information can I receive in a short amount of time? You don't need to be right all the time. You need to be honest with this drill.
I mean, there's probably a lot more subconscious processing. In fact, that's also what you can enhance with training, of course. The more you do it, the better you get at quickly, or your brain gets at quickly processing certain things, and you just react without having to think about it consciously. By consciously, I mean it doesn't have to go through your prefrontal cortex. There are other parts of the brain that process more quickly. You can't verbalize it, you respond, and then afterwards you can rationalize why you did what you did, right? But your brain needs enough experience with certain patterns and certain sequences of movement, shall we say, to be able to fire that off quickly.
But how do you get experience? Have you ever been stabbed in real life before?
Nope.
I've never been stabbed in real life either. So
And even if you were, how much can you learn from that? How do you learn how to drive a car? Like, you have to put a lot of practice hours into it, right? Yes, you will learn more from being on the street, but you can't just start off just getting in your car and getting out on the road, not knowing anything, not knowing the rules, not knowing anything. You just head out there and see what happens. Be in 20 accidents in a row and then be like, oh yeah, I know how to drive now. But you still need to understand the theory as well, and the basics, and you need to practice, right? You don't want to learn by doing while you're getting stabbed for real.
it's going to have different points of failure depending on who you are and who I am.
Yes.
That point of failure could be strength.
Right, exactly.
That point of failure could be technique. That point of failure could be skill deficiency.
Yeah.
And also, it depends on where you are on the way. That's something I pointed out in a video that I made about medieval dagger defense, where like a lot of these techniques are mechanically sound, but whether or not you'll be able to pull them off is a different story, because you need to be a little bit faster than the opponent generally. And it can fail if the opponent reacts before you've come to the critical point. There's kind of a point of no return in most techniques, where like if you get to this point, you have control, you have probably broken a joint already. At that point, it's over for the knife attacker. But before that, it can fail. It can fail here, it can fail here. As soon as I've got it basically here, I'm good. Because here, even if he resists now, I can drive with my entire body weight against just his arm. Of course it's gonna work.
So it's more important for you to find out where your point of failure is than to learn the proper technique, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the same technique is not going to work on every individual.
Yes, that's also a very good point. Okay, I don't want to play any more of the video and benefit from someone else's work. There's still the question of, should you run in a knife fight? If you want to know that, you got to watch that video. In general, Paulo Rubio is an excellent instructor and really knows how to convey the message. He's not only good at what he does, he's also good at explaining it very well in such a way that you can easily understand what he means. Just a few more thoughts about this topic. So I made a video about medieval dagger defense a while ago, and also under the disclaimer, this is my personal interpretation of these techniques, and don't go out and try to use this in real life, and just be aware of the limitations, and this may not work as well as you think. All of that. There are some people who think that techniques don't work at all in and of themselves. They're a waste of time, because the situation is not going to be exactly like that in the real scenario and all that. I can see where they're coming from, but I don't think that's the right way to think about it, because what training is about is really giving you a framework of some things that could potentially happen, and to drill the response enough that you have the pattern, like your body has the pattern memorized. I say your body, but of course it's your brain. It's just the parts of the brain that are quicker at processing. You have certain instinctive responses, reflexes. Some of them are adaptive, others are not in a certain situation. So you want to take the maladaptive ones and replace that with a more effective pattern for what you're trying to accomplish here. So by practicing these things, practicing a variety of responses that are in and of themselves sound, like they make sense, they're biomechanically sound, they can still be defeated if the opponent is stronger than you, faster than you, etc., or knows better. Nothing is foolproof, but it gives you an arsenal of potential responses that you can fire off, as opposed to just, oh shit, don't stab me, please. Some of the stuff in medieval and Renaissance manuscripts is overly fancy, too complicated, and I can't imagine that really being pulled off unless it's really practiced extensively. And the more complicated it is, the more time it takes. So it's also a matter of being strategic with what you choose to spend points on, if you will. If you're thinking about gameplay mechanics, you have to invest points into skills, and some skills are fairly point intensive and they're not really all that good. Anyway, it's enough babbling. Watch the damn video if you haven't yet. Hope you found this entertaining. Thanks for watching, and stay safe.